Are you ready? Because today we're going to work through and complete a full IELTS practice test. But before we get into it, be sure to download the free IELTS practice test booklet from the description or chat below. This booklet is great because it has space for you to write your answers as you watch along. It also includes every task, question, passage, task card, and sample response included in this practice test. Click the link and download for free. So in today's class, I'll give you some tips, then you'll have the chance to practice, and finally, I'll explain the answers to you for every task. Now let's get started with the reading section and let's jump straight into our first task, matching information. Here it is. The instructions for the task are at the top. They say, the text has 6 paragraphs A to F. Which paragraph contains the following information? Note what it says next. You may use any letter more than once. This means that more than one of the questions might match the same paragraph. On the right is the set of questions presented in a table with a button to click for the matching paragraph. The columns at the top of the box are labeled from A to F, matching the letter labeling of each paragraph. For these questions, you're being asked to match information from the questions to the paragraphs in the passage. Sometimes, not every paragraph will be needed in your answers, and some paragraphs might be covered more than once. Here are some tips for this question type. First, you need to read the question wording carefully. The questions will often include words that tell you what kind of information to look for. You should also think of synonyms for the key words in the questions. The wording in the questions will often be a paraphrase of the wording in the reading passage, so synonyms will help you to locate the corresponding information quickly. Next, you should scan each paragraph to find specific details or key words that match the questions. Then read in detail to make sure the information matches. So, are you ready to have a go yourself? For this practice, you should allow around 90 seconds per question, so set a timer for 9 minutes and pause this video now to answer questions 1 to 6. Remember, you can download the free IELTS practice test booklet to work alongside the video and fill in your answers. It also includes the reading passages if you find it easier to read there. Click the link in the description or chat below to download. You now have 10 seconds to pause the video before we look at the answers. Ready? Start now. Okay, well done. You've just finished the matching information questions. Let's take a look at the answers. Question 1 asks to find an explanation of why workers are concerned about how quickly automation is changing work environments. Remember that it helps to look for synonyms or paraphrasing, that is, saying the same thing in a different way. For this question, the key words here are workers, concerned, and quickly. The correct answer is paragraph C. Look at this sentence. It says, many worry that the pace of automation today outstrips society's ability to adapt. Worry is a synonym for concerned, and pace relates to the speed. This paragraph also says, automation is advancing at such a rapid rate that retaining efforts may not be sufficient to keep up. And rapid rate is another way of saying quickly. So in this example, the information matches even though the key words were paraphrased. Question 2 asks to find an example of automation being used in more ways than just traditional manual work. The correct answer is paragraph A. The paragraph mentions automation being used in other ways. The paragraph refers to chatbots and use in creative fields. It also says automation is no longer limited to repetitive manual tasks, but is expanding. Notice how each question tells you what kind of information to look for. Question 1 was an explanation. Question 2 was an example. And now question 3 asks for a comparison of how different groups describe automation. So we're looking for somewhere that mentions one group being compared against another group. we need to find a paragraph that compares at least two groups. So the correct answer for this question is paragraph D. The paragraph presents a contrast between how the media is shaping public perception with what companies are saying about automation. In this example, the words comparison and contrast were important keywords that linked the question to the answer. Question 4 asks for a reason why automation continues to be a topic that people disagree about. The focus is on disagreement. The correct answer is paragraph B. Did you notice any words that helped signpost a difference of ideas? The words despite and while are contrast signal words. They show there's a difference, contradiction, or opposing idea. Paragraph B says, despite these advancements, automation remains a contentious issue. It goes on to give a reason why this is the case, saying, many workers fear that increased reliance on machines and software will lead to widespread unemployment, and also that concerns persist about its long-term impact on employment rates. Next, question 5 asks you to find a suggestion for how businesses can directly help workers adapt to automation. Some key words here include suggestion, businesses, workers, and adapt. The answer to this question is paragraph E. It says, businesses must therefore take proactive steps to ensure that automation is integrated in a way that benefits workers rather than simply displacing them. The focus here is on businesses helping workers to adapt. The last question in this section asks, which paragraph contains a mention of how automation has affected jobs in different types of work? So we're looking for a mention. The answer is in paragraph A. Did you find some of the keyword synonyms? Look at the first sentence. It says, automation has transformed industries. This wording has a similar meaning to the words affected and different types of work used in the question. The paragraph mentions changes to different types of work, including manufacturing using robotic systems, customer service using chatbots, and creative fields for data analysis, content generation, and design. Did you notice that this is the second question that has paragraph A as the answer? We know this is allowed because the instructions say you may use any letter more than once. So, how did you find matching information? Let me know in the comments. Was this task easy or did you find it challenging? And remember, head to e2language.com for more matching information, practice questions, and more. Okay, on to the next IELTS reading question type, multiple choice. There are two different kinds of multiple choice questions in the IELTS reading test, single answer or multiple answers, but for this question, you have to select only one correct answer from the 4 options. So here it is. The instructions are short and say, questions 7 to 9, choose the correct answer. In this example, we see question 7 is expanded and it has 4 answer options. Beside each option is a circle you can click to select your answer choice. With this type of multiple choice question, there is only one correct answer. You need to scan for specific information and then read in detail to select the correct answer. Here are some tips to tackle this question type. First, quickly read the question and read the answer options so that you know what information to look for in the reading passage. Then, use keywords in the question and answer options to locate your answer. The answer options might all look correct because the test writers try to include distracting information. So watch out for some of the common types of distractors. The answers will be in order, meaning that if you found an answer in paragraph C in the first question, you know the next answers for the other questions must come from paragraph C or later paragraphs. Remember that you need to focus on meaning so that you know which answer option is correct. Also, as you work through the 4 options, you should try to eliminate the incorrect options to help you narrow down the correct answer. Now it's time for you to have a go. For this task, I recommend you set a timer for 4.5 minutes. And remember, you can download the reading passages and tasks as a PDF from the description or chat below. I'll now give you 10 seconds to pause the video before we look at the answers. Ready? Start now. Okay, well done. That's all the multiple choice questions finished. Let's take a look at the answers. Question 7 asks, what does the passage suggest about how the media influences opinions on automation? The 4 answer options are about possible ways that media influences opinions on automation. So a key word here is media, and paragraph D is about media. This is a good place to look for the correct answer. For this question, the first option is the correct answer. It says, it often focuses on job losses, which increases public concern. Did you find this information in paragraph D? It's here, where it says, news headlines frequently highlight the potential job losses. But let's look at why the other options are incorrect. The second option says, it mostly reports on the benefits of automation, making people support it. But this is not correct. The paragraph says that it's companies, not the media, that focus on benefits. The third option says the media provides only facts, letting people decide for themselves. But this is also incorrect because the passage describes a divide in narratives about how automation is presented. This shows the media is not just reporting the facts. And the final option is also incorrect because it says it does not talk about automation very often, whereas the passage mentions that news headlines frequently highlight potential job losses caused by automation. So even though it might look like a few of the options could be correct, there's only one correct answer. You can see that reading the question and the options carefully is very important. Question 8 asks, according to the passage, what is one way businesses can reduce workers' fears about automation? The key words here are businesses, reduce, and workers' fears. The answer options list 4 ways this might happen. This question focuses on businesses and workers, and that information appears in paragraph E. Let's go through the options to eliminate the incorrect ones and confirm the correct answer. So the first option says, businesses can help by delaying automation. However, the passage says nothing about delaying automation. It only mentions helping workers adjust by taking steps to ensure automation is integrated. So this option is not correct. The second option suggests businesses could reduce workers' fears by replacing human workers only when necessary, but this is not mentioned in the passage at all. So it's also incorrect. The third option says businesses can reduce workers' fears by helping employees learn new skills so they can work with machines. This is mentioned here where it talks about upskilling programs and also where it says that when businesses offer workers training programs, workers are more likely to accept automation. This is the correct answer. The final option says businesses can reduce workers' fears by giving extra pay to employees who lose their jobs. But this is not correct because the passage does not mention anything about extra pay. So for this question, you need to use your paraphrasing skills to recognize how ideas in the passage are expressed differently in the answer choices. That means you need to identify synonyms and reworded phrases while making sure the meaning stays the same. There's one more question in this section. Because we already know that questions appear in the order of where the answers come from in the passage, we know that the answer to question 9 must be found in either paragraph E or F. Question 9 asks, what is the passage's suggestion about the future of automation? The key words here are future and automation. The answer options list 4 possible future situations. The first option says, automation should be stopped before it causes too much harm. The passage talks about finding ways to manage automation properly. In paragraph E, it mentions steps to ensure automation is integrated, and paragraph F mentions finding ways to integrate it responsibly and says the challenge lies not in stopping automation, but in shaping its impact. So even though there is mention of being cautious, this option is incorrect because it talks about not stopping automation. The second option says automation will eventually replace all human jobs. This is an example of information that is almost correct. The passage does refer a lot to jobs being replaced, but there's no mention about replacing all jobs. Here, in paragraph F, the passage actually shows that not all jobs will be replaced by automation. It states that automation can enhance productivity and improve job quality rather than merely eliminating roles. So this option is incorrect. The third option says automation will mainly benefit businesses by cutting costs. The text states that businesses will benefit, but it also stresses the need to help workers. Paragraph E talks about ways that benefit workers, and paragraph F mentions how automation could improve job quality. This option is incorrect. So far, we've eliminated all three options, which tells us the final option should be the correct answer, but we still need to check the information and confirm this. The fourth option says automation should be introduced in a way that benefits workers and businesses. Paragraphs E and F suggest that automation should be managed carefully so that it helps both workers and businesses. The last sentence in paragraph E makes this recommendation, as do the first two sentences in paragraph F. So this is the correct answer for this question. Great! You've now completed 9 questions in today's IELTS reading practice test. There's one more question type to go, and it's summary completion. Okay, looking at the instructions now, they say questions 10 to 13. Complete the summary. Write one word only from the text in each gap. These instructions are important because they tell us that each answer can only have one word and that this word must come from the passage. In some cases, you may be told to write no more than 2 words or 1 word and/or a number, so pay attention as this can vary. And you can see the summary here, and this one has 4 gaps that you need to complete. For summary completion questions, you're being tested on your ability to understand specific details and/or the main ideas in a part of the reading passage. Here are some tips for doing well with this question type. The first thing to do is read the instructions to find out how many words are allowed for each answer. Then, you should quickly skim the summary to get an idea of its general topic and overall meaning. Check the title as it can help you identify which part of the passage contains the answers. Also, make a note of any key words in the summary that might help you locate the information you need. As you skim the summary, try to think about or predict what word could go into the gap. You should also identify the word type that's needed in each gap. By this, I mean noun, adjective, verb, and so on. Often, but not always, the answers will be nouns. Okay, are you ready to try? I recommend you give yourself 7 minutes to answer these questions. All right, you have 10 seconds to pause the video and have a go at the task before we look at the answers. Ready? Start now. Well done! You've now completed all the questions in this practice reading test. And remember, head to e2language.com for more IELTS reading practice tasks and so much more. Let's now go through all the answers for the summary completion task. So the summary is about the concerns employees have with automation. Did you find where this information comes in the passage? It's in paragraphs B and C. Look at the summary now. The title is Concerns About Automation, and the first gap appears in the first sentence, which reads, Many employees worry that automation will cause higher rates of blank, especially in sectors where machines are replacing people. So this sentence is about work and concerns people have about losing their jobs. Look at this sentence in the passage in paragraph B. It says, Many workers fear that increased reliance on machines and software will lead to widespread unemployment, particularly in industries where automation can fully replace human labor. The information is the same as what's in the summary. We need a word to come after rates of. The correct word from the passage is unemployment. Many employees worry that automation will cause higher rates of unemployment, especially in sectors where machines are replacing people. There were a couple of other possible answers from the passage that look like they might work in terms of the meaning here. One was in paragraph D, which is job losses, and the other in paragraph E, which is reduction in workforce. But neither of these fit this question because only one word is allowed. Being familiar with the phrase rates of unemployment also helped to confirm this as the right answer. So the next blank is in the sentence, some people feel they have very little blank over how automation is developing. So this sentence is about how people feel in relation to how automation is developing. And remember, this summary is titled Concerns about Automation. So from this information, we can work out that people are feeling they don't have enough of something in terms of this development. The answer is in paragraph C, where it mentions the perceived lack of control over automation's expansion. Some people feel they have very little control over how automation is developing, particularly as businesses continue to adopt new technologies. Notice how the word lack is paraphrased to very little. The meaning is the same, but the wording is different. The next sentence with the blank reads, a major issue is that blank is a technology which is developing so rapidly that workers struggle to adjust. We know from this sentence structure that the blank is about some kind of technology that is developing rapidly. Paragraph C talks about rapid development. It says, many worry that the pace of automation today outstrips society's ability to adapt. So the answer to question 12 is automation. The passage has other words that might look suitable, but they do not fit. The word machines in paragraph B, for example, might convey the correct meaning, but it doesn't fit. Machines is a technology is grammatically incorrect because machines is plural and does not fit with is. So checking not just meaning, but also whether your answer choice works grammatically is really important. Finally, the next sentence reads, unlike in the past, employees today often lack sufficient time to learn the additional blank they need before their jobs disappear. So this blank is about employees needing to learn something more. Did you find the answer? Here in paragraph C, the passage states, unlike previous industrial revolutions, where displaced workers had time to acquire new skills, automation is advancing at such a rapid rate that retraining efforts may not be sufficient to keep up. The correct answer here is skills. Employees today often lack sufficient time to learn the additional skills they need before their jobs disappear. The words learn and skills naturally fit together, so these words collocate correctly. The words retraining efforts might seem like it could fit in the summary sentence, but remember that only one word can be used for the answer. Also, the summary specifically talks about what workers need and not the method used to obtain it. So for summary completion, make sure you understand the summary before looking for the words. Check that the word or words you choose fit into the blanks, both in terms of meaning and grammar. And don't forget to check your answers and check your spelling. Here are all the answers for this reading practice test. How many did you get correct? Let me know in the comments. If you got all of them correct, you could be well on track to getting a high score on test day. If not, I recommend you head to e2language.com. Get started today for free or upgrade to one of our premium test prep courses and get access to heaps of practice tests, assessments, live classes, video lessons, and full mock tests with feedback. Okay, next section, IELTS listening and our first task, multiple choice. Today's practice tasks are based on listening part 2, so you'll be listening to a monologue on an everyday topic. Here it is. At the top, you can see the instructions. They say, listen and answer questions 1 to 4. Then below that, you can see the multiple choice questions. Before each part of the listening test starts, you'll be given some time to look at the questions. In this case, you're given about 30 seconds to look at questions 1 to 4 before the recording for those questions plays. Use this time wisely by understanding what the questions are asking and noticing keywords to listen out for or to listen for synonyms in the recording. Notice the instructions for each say, choose 2 correct answers. So these are multiple choice, multiple answer questions. You can see each has a question, followed by 5 answer choices, and you must pick 2 answers for each. My top tips for answering these questions are to read the question and answer option wording carefully. You should also think of synonyms for the key words, meaning words that have the same or similar meaning with each other. So you need to listen for key words or synonyms to help you identify the relevant information quickly. Next, be sure to answer as you listen. Don't try and listen first and then answer the questions at the end, or you won't be able to keep up with the test. And eliminate incorrect options as you go to help narrow down the answers. Also, make sure you watch out for distractors. Often an incorrect option is mentioned in the text, but in a way that doesn't make it a correct answer. So be careful and don't fall for these tricks. Remember, you can download the free IELTS practice test booklet to work alongside the video. Click the link in the description or chat below to download. So, are you ready to have a go? Listen out for the key details and watch out for distractors. Here we go. You'll hear a recruitment consultant giving a talk to students who are interested in a career in construction. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
Hello everyone, my name's Alex Johnson and I'm a recruitment consultant at Build Right Recruitment. We're an agency that specialises in providing staff for the construction industry. Now I understand that you're all final year students in the School of Engineering and you're interested in working in construction. So I'd like to talk to you today about some of the opportunities available and the skills you'll need to succeed in this sector. Construction is a diverse field, which involves the building of many different types of premises. Of course, the main 2 types of premises are residential properties and commercial properties. At the moment, we're seeing increasing demand for properties that are built using energy-efficient materials and green technologies to keep up with the tightening regulations. Supply depots and storage facilities are another type of construction that you could be involved in, depending on your job. Also, governments worldwide are investing heavily in updating and expanding infrastructure, leading to a surge in projects related to roads, bridges, and bus and rail networks. This means there's a need for civil engineers and project planners who can oversee these large-scale projects. When it comes to working in the construction industry, having a formal education in construction fields such as engineering or project management can be beneficial. A university qualification may open doors to specific roles, but many professionals in the industry have built successful careers through hands-on experience and apprenticeships instead. Being able to set project budgets, oversee payments, and ensure financial resources are used efficiently can be important, although it's more relevant for managerial roles rather than a necessity for every position. Something that companies consistently look for is familiarity with industry-specific tools and methods. Knowing how to operate advanced machinery, interpret architectural drawings, and use modern planning software is something that makes job applicants stand out. Those who can confidently apply these tend to be highly sought after in the field. Also, being able to collaborate with others is key. Whether it's explaining project requirements to a team, discussing timelines with suppliers, or resolving issues on site, being able to do this effectively with different groups is crucial to keep projects running smoothly.
Okay, that's the first half of the practice test done. How did you go? Let's go over the answers to find out. The first question is, according to Alex, which 2 areas of the construction industry are experiencing significant growth? Alex says we're seeing increasing demand for properties that are built using energy-efficient materials and green technologies. So this confirms the second option, environmentally friendly building. He also says, governments worldwide are investing heavily in updating and expanding infrastructure, leading to a surge in projects related to roads, bridges, and bus and rail networks. So the other correct answer is transportation works. You may have heard Alex say the main two types of premises are residential properties and commercial properties. While this may seem to suggest the first and third options, it doesn't say that these areas are undergoing growth, so they're just distractors. Similarly, industrial warehouses are covered when Alex says supply depots and storage facilities are another type of construction that you could be involved in. But again, no mention is made of this being an area of growth. So you can see how the exam uses distractors so that you have to listen very carefully rather than just word spot. The next question was, which two skills or qualifications does Alex say are essential for success in the construction industry? Alex says, knowing how to operate advanced machinery, interpret architectural drawings, and use modern planning software is something that makes job applicants stand out. Those who can confidently apply these tend to be highly sought after. So this means that technical knowledge is a correct answer. Alex also says explaining project requirements to a team, discussing timelines with suppliers, or resolving issues on site, being able to do this effectively with different groups is crucial, which relates to communication. Did any of you get tricked by the distractors? Let's go over them. Alex said having a formal education in construction-related fields can be beneficial, but many professionals in the industry have built successful careers through hands-on experience and apprenticeships instead. So he's mentioning a degree, but saying it's not essential, so that's the opposite of what we're looking for. He also mentions being able to set project budgets, oversee payments, and ensure financial resources are used efficiently. But again, this is just something that can be important and is more relevant to managerial roles, so again, it's not essential. So hopefully you now have a better understanding of multiple choice questions in IELTS listening. If you'd like more IELTS listening practice, specifically the multiple choice task, head to e2language.com and get started on your test prep for free. Let's now move on to the next listening task type, matching questions. Okay, here they are. The instructions say questions 5 to 10. Choose the correct answer and move it into the gap. So this is a drag and drop style question. In the paper-based test, the options would be lettered and you would just write the correct letter for each question number. Then you have a question. In this case, it asks, what information does Alex give about each of the following job opportunities? You can see a list of items on the left. These tend to be clearly identifiable things like names, places, activities, and so on. In this case, they're names of jobs. Then on the right, there's a list of answer options. These are usually descriptions, details, characteristics, or opinions. Here, it's details about the jobs. One thing to note here is that there are usually more options than you need, meaning that some of them will not match with anything in the list. They're distractors, but sometimes in matching questions, there will be fewer options on the right. For those questions, the options can be used more than once. In our example, there are 6 items in the list and 8 options, meaning 2 will not be used. Matching questions in the listening test are mainly testing your ability to be able to listen for detail about each list item and to recognize the connections between information to see which 2 items match together. Some top tips for matching are: read the list items and listen out for these in the recording, and the list items will be covered in the same order in the recording as the order they're listed in, so this can help you to know which one to focus on as you listen. In the preparation time, you should also read the answer options. One important point is that while the list items are usually mentioned exactly as they're written, the options will often be paraphrased. And as always in listening, watch out for distractors. If you're wanting a full detailed methods lesson on how to tackle matching questions, head to e2language.com for one of our IELTS test prep courses. Are you ready to have a go? Listen out for the key details and try to match them to the list items. Before you hear the rest of the talk, you'll have 30 seconds to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
Now, let's take a look at some of the roles that we currently have available in the construction industry. First up, we have a site manager position. This is a permanent position that involves overseeing daily operations and ensuring the project stays on schedule. This is for a large global organization, so it requires travel to international project sites. The salary for this role is very high given the seniority of the position and the nature of the work. We also have an open position for a building laborer. This is an entry-level position ideal for those wanting a first job in this industry. No formal qualifications are needed, but applicants must provide details of previous employers who can vouch for their reliability and work ethic. For those with a background in workplace safety, there's an opening for a safety manager. The project isn't too big or complex, so this role is for 3 days a week and involves implementing and enforcing safety measures on the construction site and some training of team members. There's also a role available for a carpenter. This is a temporary role with a fixed end date. Since this job is based in a remote location, employees are based on-site in dorms provided by the company. A Certificate 3 in carpentry is required for this role. Moving on, we have a vacancy for a heavy machinery operator. This is on a project that uses very specific, unique equipment, so training is provided to expand your knowledge of different types of equipment. You need to have strong mechanical knowledge and at least 2 years of prior experience in a similar position. Finally, we have a listing for a purchasing coordinator. This role involves working closely with suppliers to ensure materials arrive on time. We know this company well and the workers are lively and sociable, so there's a really positive workplace culture. A degree in business administration, finance, or a related field is required.
Okay, great. You've completed the second half of the listening practice test. Let's go over the answers to find out how well you did. The first item in the list is site manager. Alex says it requires travel to international project sites, so we know requires overseas travel is a correct match. You may have heard Alex say this is a permanent position, and though you can see the word permanent in this option, it says chance for the role to become permanent. So that's not a true match. It's not saying the same thing. The next item is building laborer. For this one, Alex says applicants must provide details of previous employers who can vouch for their reliability and work ethic. This is describing a job reference, so it matches with references required. The next item is safety manager. Alex says this role is for 3 days a week, so this matches with part-time work only. Again, the meaning is the same, but the wording is different. Next, we have carpenter. The recording says employees are based on site in dorms provided by the company. So the answer is includes accommodation. You may have also heard based in a remote location, but this doesn't necessarily suggest it requires overseas travel, so that option isn't a true match. The next job is heavy machinery operator. For this one, we hear training is provided to expand your knowledge of different types of equipment. This means a chance to learn new skills. You may have also heard mention of training in the safety manager role description, but there it was a manager who would be providing some training of team members, not receiving the training themselves, so that job doesn't match with learning new skills. The final item is purchasing coordinator, and the recording says the workers are lively and sociable. And this matches well with part of a fun team. And that leaves chance for role to become permanent and involves overtime work as incorrect options. So that should give you a good understanding of how to do matching questions. They require listening carefully for exact matches with the options given. Here are all the answers for this listening practice test. How many did you get correct? If you got all of them correct, you could be well on track to getting a high score on test day. That's it for today's IELTS listening practice test. Let me know in the comments how well you did. For full IELTS practice tests, mock tests, live classes, and even one-on-one tutorials, visit e2language.com for a full range of premium IELTS test preparation courses. All right, now we're up to IELTS speaking, starting with Part 1. In Part 1, the examiner will begin by introducing themselves, then asking you to state your name and show your identification. Then they'll ask you 3 sets of questions about familiar topics. The first set usually asks you general questions about yourself, such as your work or study, your home, or the place where you live. The second and third sets are personal questions about familiar topics, like the food you like, your hobbies, people you spend time with, and so on. You'll get up to 12 questions in this part, and it's important to know how to answer them well in the time given. But don't worry, today you'll only get 4 Part 1 questions. Here are my tips for Part 1. First, give extended answers. As a general rule, I'd say try to talk for around 20 seconds for each answer. That's the equivalent of about 2 to 3 written sentences. Try to add more information to your response, such as giving an example or a reason to explain your answer. Also, make sure your answers have complete sentences. Don't just give single-word answers. Finally, there are no right or wrong answers to the questions, but what you say should answer the question. Now it's time for you to try Part 1. I'm going to ask you 1 set of questions, and you'll have 20 seconds to answer each. And to get the most out of today's practice test, I recommend you record your answers so you can go back and check how you went. Okay, ready? Here we go. Let's talk about television. What kinds of television programs do you like watching? Did you like the same kinds of TV programs when you were young? What types of television programs are most popular in your country? Is there anything you don't like about watching TV? How did you go? The topic was quite straightforward. Remember that you're likely to be familiar with the topics in Part 1, so you should be able to respond easily from your own personal experiences and knowledge. If you want to practice with test-like conditions, head to e2language.com, and included in a range of our premium IELTS test prep courses are speaking assessments and mock tests. Okay, let's see how I'd answer these questions. Notice how I will extend my answers by giving extra information. Also listen for some of the different words and grammar structures I use to show my range and skills. First question, what kinds of television programs do you like watching? I'm really into documentaries, especially ones about history or true crime. I love getting drawn into real-life stories, and I suppose they're a great way to learn something without feeling like you're studying. That said, sometimes I just want to switch off, so I'll watch a good comedy or a lighthearted series. Second question. Did you like the same kinds of TV programs when you were young? Not really. As a kid, I was all about cartoons and adventure shows, programs that were fun and fast-paced. I wasn't into anything too serious, but as I got older, my tastes changed. I started enjoying more thought-provoking stuff like dramas and documentaries. I guess it just comes with growing up. Third question. What types of television programs are most popular in your country? Well, reality TV shows seem to be extremely popular. People love those based on competitions, things like cooking contests or talent shows, and of course, dramas are huge, especially ones with gripping storylines. But I'd also have to say that streaming services have changed things a lot, so now people want a mix of both international and local productions. Fourth question, is there anything you don't like about watching TV? Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest downside is how addictive it can be. It's so easy to say, just one more episode, and suddenly you've wasted hours. Also, some shows feel a bit repetitive, like they have the same plot lines just recycled. And of course, the ads can be really interruptive and annoying. Please let me know in the comments what you thought of these Part 1 questions. Now let's move on to speaking Part 2. In Part 2, you're given a topic and asked to talk about it for between 1 and 2 minutes. You have some time to prepare before you start speaking. For this part, the examiner gives you a task card which tells you the topic and has suggested points you should talk about in relation to the topic. Broadly speaking, the topic is going to be about either a thing, a person, a place, an event, or an activity. You have 1 minute preparation time, and you can take notes to help you remember and organize what you want to say. Then you need to speak for between 1 and 2 minutes. Shortly, you're going to have a chance to practice a sample Part 2 speaking test. Before that, here's a few tips to think about. First, it's really important to use your 1 minute preparation time well. In this 1 minute prep time, you need to quickly read the topic and suggested points and take a few short notes. Don't try to write sentences or even detailed notes. There is not enough time. Just note down 1 or 2 words for each suggested point to help you stay focused when talking. Make sure you speak for the full 2 minutes. Think about ways you can add extra information to what you're saying. You might give reasons, explanations, or additional details. Also, remember to think about your fluency, using a range of vocabulary that relates to the topic, using a range of grammar structures and sentence types, and showing good pronunciation. Okay, so now it's time for you to practice Part 2. Make sure you have a pen and paper and a recording device to record your speaking. Remember, you can download the free IELTS practice test booklet, which includes the Speaking Part 2 task card and space for notes. Click the link in the description or chat below to download. Are you ready? Here we go. Now I'm going to give you a topic and I'd like you to talk about it for 1 to 2 minutes. Before you speak, you'll have 1 minute to think about what you're going to say. You can make some notes if you wish. Please use a pen and paper for your notes, and here's your topic. I'd like you to describe a time where you enjoyed sharing a meal with a friend. You now have 2 minutes for this. Can you start speaking now, please? Thank you. How is that? Did you manage to make a few notes in the 1-minute prep time? It goes quickly, right? And did you manage to speak for the full 2 minutes? Let me show you how I would answer this Part 2 task. During the prep time, with only enough time to write a few words, this is what I would write. For who, I'd jot down the name, in this case my friend Alex. For where, we ate in a Chinese restaurant. What we ate was a vegetarian hot pot. Notice the use of abbreviation here. That's a good trick for writing notes quickly. And why I enjoyed it, well, I hadn't seen Alex in 3 years, so it was a chance to reconnect and reminisce. Notice I'm noting some strong vocab here. And I also enjoyed it because it showed our friendship is still strong. And now I'll give my full response. Listen for my use of vocabulary and grammar structures, how I develop the topic and link my ideas, and my pronunciation. I'm going to talk about a time when I really enjoyed sharing a meal with a friend. It happened about a year ago when I met up with my old friend Alex. We'd been close in university, but after graduating, life got busy and we lost touch. In fact, it had been almost 3 years since we'd last seen each other, so we decided to catch up over dinner. We chose a cozy Chinese restaurant in the city that specialized in hot pot. It was a great choice because hot pot is such a social meal. You sit around a steaming pot, cooking your own food, and it naturally creates conversation. The atmosphere in the restaurant was warm and lively, with the sound of bubbling broth and people chatting all around us. We ordered a vegetarian hot pot, which was perfect because Alex is vegetarian. There was a huge variety of fresh ingredients: mushrooms, tofu, leafy greens, and noodles. I remember the spicy broth being absolutely delicious, and we kept adding more ingredients as we talked. The whole experience felt interactive, which made the meal even more enjoyable. What made the evening truly special was the chance for Alex and me to reconnect. We reminisced about our university days, shared stories about what we'd been up to, and laughed a lot. I felt like no time had passed at all. Even though we'd been apart for so long, our friendship was still as strong as ever. Since that night, we've stayed in touch more regularly, and we're actually planning another dinner soon. I think meals like this bring people together, not just for the food, but for the memories they create. Obviously, the content of your response will be quite different to mine, but you can see that I managed to talk for the full 2 minutes by developing my ideas. I used a variety of appropriate vocabulary and grammar structures, and hopefully I sounded fluent with good pronunciation. If you can do those things too, you'll do really well in this part. For more information on IELTS speaking scoring, head to e2language.com, and included in a range of IELTS test prep courses are methods videos that go into detail on all aspects of IELTS speaking band descriptors. Now it's time for Part 3. Part 3 is where you have a discussion with the examiner. The examiner is going to ask you questions on 1 or 2 different topics that have some connection to what you just talked about in Part 2. The questions you're asked in this section are more complex than the ones you're asked in Part 1 of the test. Your answers are likely to be a bit longer too, so this is where you can give more detailed responses to questions. Instead of giving more factual information like you're asked for in Part 1, Part 3 questions ask you to respond in a more abstract way. For example, they may require you to justify an opinion, evaluate changes over time, speculate, assess the importance of something, compare and contrast, and so on. In Part 3, you should speak from a more general and objective perspective. So for example, rather than talk about what you like, you should talk about what most people in your country like. The examiner will ask from 2 sets of questions, and this part of the test will take about 4 to 5 minutes. As with the other 2 parts of the speaking test, you'll be assessed on your fluency and coherence, your range of vocabulary and grammar structures, and your pronunciation. Remember, Part 3 is about answering in a more general but in-depth way, so you need to make sure your responses are well developed. Here are my top tips for speaking Part 3. Aim for between 20 and 40 seconds per answer. To develop your answers, think about giving what we call a 3-step answer to each question. For step 1, you should state your position, such as saying, I agree, I disagree, yes, no, or I think. In step 2, you can give a reason, explanation, outcome, and so on that supports your position. And then step 3 is where you can give an example. Even though there are no right or wrong answers, it's important you listen carefully to the questions because you need to make sure you're answering the actual question that you're being asked. And don't forget, your answers should be general and objective, so avoid giving personal answers and information. Okay, so now it's time for you to practice this part. I'm going to ask you one set of Part 3 questions, and you'll have time to answer. Remember to record your answers so you can go back and check how you went. Okay, are you ready? Here we go. We've been talking about a meal you enjoyed, and I'd like to ask you 1 or 2 more general questions related to this. Let's consider, first of all, changes in eating habits. How have eating habits changed over the past few decades? Do you think fast food culture has affected the tradition of sharing meals? In what ways do people's eating habits differ between younger and older generations? How did you go with these questions? To help you evaluate, you can compare your responses to how I respond. Listen for whether I answer the questions in a general way and whether I develop my answers. First question, how have eating habits changed over the past few decades? Well, eating habits have changed dramatically over the last few decades. People used to cook at home more often, but now, with busy lifestyles, there's a shift towards convenience, which means people are eating more ready meals, takeaways, and eating out more. There's also been a big rise in health-conscious eating. You see more organic food, plant-based diets, and people cutting down on sugar. In saying that, ultra-processed foods are also more common than ever. For example, in many cities, you'll find fast food joints on every street corner, which wasn't really the case 30 years ago. If this trend continues, we might see even more health-related problems in the future. Second question, do you think fast food culture has affected the tradition of sharing meals? Yeah, I think so. Fast food has made eating more individualistic. People often grab a burger on the go instead of sitting down for a proper meal. Traditionally, meals were a social event, especially in cultures where family dinners were important. But now, with things like food delivery apps, People eat at different times in front of screens or even alone, even when they're in the same home. This kind of change is a bit of a shame and could have quite negative consequences on family dynamics especially. Third question, in what ways do people's eating habits differ between younger and older generations? There's definitely a contrast. Older generations tend to prefer home-cooked meals and traditional recipes, while younger people experiment more with different cuisines like Persian and Sri Lankan food or fusion food. Plus, young people often eat on the move, relying on fast food or meal prep services, whereas older people usually sit down for meals. Another big difference is social media. Young people are influenced by food trends online like superfoods or veganism. But one thing's for sure, both groups seem to be becoming more aware of the importance of nutrition for general health, which is a good thing for society overall. Did you answer in a similar way, with extended responses and objective ideas rather than personal experiences? If so, you're going to do well in this part. If you'd like more practice with IELTS speaking, head to e2language.com where you can find lots of practice materials as well as mock tests, assessments, and one-on-one tutorials. Now we are up to the final section, IELTS writing, and we'll be tackling Task 2. On the left, you can see the main instructions at the top. They say you should spend about 40 minutes on this part. Write at least 250 words. Then you have the essay prompt below that. The prompt will tell you what topic to write about and requires you to present an argument, express an opinion, or discuss the topic from multiple perspectives. Below the prompt is further instructions. These are always the same. They say, give reasons for your answer and include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. So, you're clearly being asked to give an extended response with several reasons that are supported with evidence. Now that you know what the task looks like, let's quickly go over how it's scored, so you know what you need to focus on to do well. So you're scored on a scale of 0 to 9. You're being assessed on task response, which is about whether you address the prompt appropriately with relevant ideas that are fully supported. You're also being assessed on coherence and cohesion, which is whether your ideas can be followed easily because you use a logical sequence of information with appropriate paragraphing. Then there's lexical resource, which covers your ability to use a wide range of vocabulary and correct spellings. And finally, grammatical range and accuracy, which looks at whether you can use a wide range of grammatical structures with appropriate punctuation. Each of these areas contributes to your overall band score. A strong essay balances all 4 criteria. Remember, you can download the free IELTS practice test booklet to work alongside the video. Included is a space for you to write your essay. Okay, here's the task again. This is what you'll be working on today. Let's get started by reading the prompt carefully. It says, the most important aim of technology should be to enhance human creativity. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this statement? This is quite a typical Task 2 question. You need to take a clear stance, either agree, disagree, or take a balanced approach. And you need to support your position with reasons, examples, and explanations. Here are my tips for doing well in IELTS writing. First of all, plan your work before writing. Decide on your stance and your main arguments. That will help you to structure your essay well using appropriate paragraphs. You should have a paragraph for the introduction, which introduces the topic and your stance, then a paragraph for each main reason to support your stance, then a conclusion. You should use clear topic sentences for your body paragraphs that clearly let the reader know what the paragraph is about. And you should provide explanations and specific examples to support your reasons. Make sure you avoid repetition in your writing. And be sure to leave a moment at the end to check over your grammar and spelling to make sure everything is accurate. Ready to have a go? Remember, on test day, it takes about 40 minutes to complete this task. I'm now going to give you 10 seconds to pause the video before we look at a sample response. Ready? Start now. Okay, did you complete the full Task 2 essay? If you did, well done. And how did you go? If you'd like individual feedback on your writing from an IELTS expert, take a writing assessment or a mock test available in a premium E2 IELTS test prep course. Let's now go over a high-scoring sample response. We'll look at it in more detail shortly, but for now, notice that there are 4 clear paragraphs: an introduction, 2 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. And you can see the word count is 282 words, so that's nicely over our 250 minimum, but without becoming too long and potentially wandering off topic or becoming repetitive. Let's look at the introduction. First, the topic of technology is introduced. Technology has transformed nearly every aspect of modern life, from healthcare to communication. Then the stance is clearly stated. While some argue that its most important purpose should be to enhance creativity, this view overlooks the fact that technology is fundamentally designed to solve problems and improve efficiency. Its primary value lies in advancing human well-being rather than serving as a tool for artistic expression. So this essay is clearly going to strongly disagree with the idea that the most important aim of technology should be to enhance human creativity. You may have chosen to agree with this idea, and that's okay too. As long as you can think of some compelling reasons and examples to support your stance, it doesn't matter which side you take. Next, there's the first body paragraph. It starts with a clear topic sentence. One of technology's most critical functions is addressing real-world challenges. So we know exactly what the first reason for the stance is and what this paragraph will be about. Then the idea is extended to make a well-developed argument. It gives examples of how technology solves problems in healthcare and in engineering. And it explains how these advancements tie in with the main argument against the idea that the most important aim of technology should be to enhance human creativity. Notice how wording from the prompt, such as the most important aim, is paraphrased here as most critical functions and chief purpose. This demonstrates a range of vocabulary. We also see terms like real-world challenges, breakthroughs, revolutionized, unparalleled precision, advancements as an alternative way of saying breakthroughs, and artistic creativity. So there's a really nice range of vocab here. Then comes the next body paragraph. Does this one have a clear topic sentence? Yes, it does. It transitions nicely from the previous paragraph by saying, beyond problem solving, and then it gives the second reason for the stance. Technology plays a vital role in enhancing efficiency and productivity. Again, this is supported with examples of technology improving efficiency in areas such as manufacturing, logistics, and everyday life. Again, the paragraph ends by tying this into the main stance. And let's take a look at some of the grammatical structures here. We can see complex sentences with multiple clauses. There are present participle phrases like benefiting society as a whole and reducing human labor. There are relative clauses like ensuring goods reach consumers faster and more reliably, and parallel structures like reducing human labor input while increasing output. So you can see there's a wide range of grammatical structures here to demonstrate a strong command of the English language. And finally, there's the conclusion. It starts very clearly with "in conclusion." Then it restates the stance and the 2 main reasons. Then it rounds off with a nice closing sentence looking towards the future. As society continues to evolve, technological advancements will remain essential in driving progress and improving overall quality of life. So this response addresses the prompt appropriately with a clear and fully developed position with relevant, fully extended ideas, strong cohesion, and a wide range of vocabulary and grammar. This would be a high-scoring response. What about yours? Let me know in the comments how you think you went. So what are some of the key takeaways from this lesson? Well, always structure your response logically. Be sure to use a range of vocabulary and grammar. Remember to support your stance with reasons and examples, and be sure to proofread your work at the end. That's it for this IELTS writing practice test. Remember, for expert IELTS writing feedback, head to e2language.com and sign up for a premium test prep package and take an assessment or a mock test. And that's it. Wow! How did you go with the full practice test? Let me know in the comments what you found challenging or if you got every question and task correct. Keep practicing, and I'll see you next time.